welcome to our exam season special with Mrs Pearson, who is a maths teacher. She did actually used to teach at my school. So she's just going to be answering any questions that you have about the exam that's tomorrow. That's GCSE Maths that's tomorrow. Yeah, we've already got questions in, so we'll just jump right in, I think. Right, Gypsy Chiara, sorry if I said it wrong. Last minute tips to revise.
Ooh, difficult one, because really you've been learning maths since you were 5. So you've been gaining knowledge since you've been 5. So you don't really revise maths last minute. It's probably going to really complicate your mind. You're better to have a quieter night tonight and go in fresh to the exam tomorrow. Make sure you've got a calculator. Make sure it's set to degrees, because otherwise you won't be able to do your trig.
I nearly had that in my physics exam today. I had it in radians and I was like, well, that's not going to work well, is it?
No. Make sure you've got your equipment, your rulers, your protractors, for all the construction work that you might have to do, compass as well. So make sure you're clear, you've got all your equipment and you're ready to go for tomorrow. But don't start cramming at this late stage. I think it will just overcomplicate things.
Okay, Raheem says, do you think higher or foundation is easier in terms of passing?
If you do foundation, you've got to get more marks. So it all depends. If you want to go in and feel more confident, you'll be able to answer a lot of the questions because they're easier. But if you go into the higher level tier, you're only going to have to answer a few questions and concentrate your efforts when you go in. Read carefully the questions and answer the questions as you go along. But take your time on the first questions in the higher level tier.
Sunshine Study says, what predictions do you think are likely to going to come up, or what's most likely?
What sort of things would come up? Well, I've put down a list here of things. Trigonometry always comes up. If it's not on tomorrow's paper, it'll be on the next paper. Mean of group data always comes up. Algebra, you're going to have to factorise, you're going to have to expand brackets, collect terms, solve equations, rearrange formulae. All of those things come up on the papers. Standard form is another common one. Know your transformations, so know the 4 different types: reflections, rotations, enlargement and translation. Don't forget to ask for tracing paper if you're doing those rotation ones. On the higher level tier, make sure you can expand 3 brackets. It's a new one that's on the papers, so I would imagine that'll come up. Completing the square, again, a newish topic. Solving fractional equations, lots of heavy work to do in algebra there, but useful. Using the formula for solving a quadratic, and some of our arithmetic sequence. All sort of common things that do come up year on year.
Yeah, definitely make sure you know the quadratic equation. It makes your life so much easier if you just know it and don't need to think about it. Don't need to search through for. I don't know if they get a formula booklet. Do you get formula booklets at GCSE?
They've cut down on the front of your exam paper. The first page in, you get a formula sheet, but they have cut down on the formulae.
Right. So make sure you know all the ones that aren't going to come up in your formula booklet as well. Yeah. So Raheem also says, I'm so scared for foundation, especially ratio and shapes. So do you have any tips on ratio and shapes?
Ratio. Think about cancelling fractions and things like that. If you can just show techniques, it'll get marks. Your examiner, the examiner who's going to mark your paper, will just want to give you marks. There are 3 types of marks on a maths paper. Accuracy marks, marks for techniques such as expanding a bracket or something like that, and the third lot is an accuracy method marks. So whatever method you can put on your piece of paper, they will look to give you credit. So just try, if you've stuck on a question and it's fractions, think, well, can I give an equivalent fraction? If it's algebra, can you expand a bracket? Can you collect terms? They're going to give you marks, you know, for whatever you do. So just try to do something. Don't sit there and leave an empty page.
Even if you're convinced that you don't have the right answer, just putting something down on the page could get you method marks. That's what I always do in my maths exams. Okay, what's the best way to revise for maths? That's from Maureen Ali.
I think I said earlier, you will have been learning maths from a very early age, and it is practice of exam papers, and now is not the time to be doing that. You know, if you don't need 100% on your exam, basically, you need to know some concepts. Basically concentrate on those. When you go into the exam, look for a question that you can answer. And if you do 2 or 3 questions like that, even if they're halfway through the paper, you will gain in confidence, you will feel better, and you will then go on to have a go at other things.
Yeah, do you think learning methods for maths is good? Because I think that, like, in maths, obviously, it's quite logical, so there's always, like, set methods for each certain topic. Do you think that they're probably one of the main things that, like, to learn?
Yeah, I think, you know, you get a triangle, right, okay, it's trig.
Yeah.
You label the triangle.
Yeah.
You then write down the ratio, you look, you identify what length is it that I've got to find. So it's going to lead you to the ratio that you're going to use. Putting those kind of things down, that's what the examiner, again, is looking for. So they want those things. So if you've got a method that will work, then it makes the examiner's life easier to give you marks.
Oh, they said it's non-calculator tomorrow. Do you have any tips for people who are doing non-calculator?
Non-calculator, even with a calculator, put your working out down. Don't miss out on those method marks. People do move to a calculator very, very quickly, and they go straight on to using a calculator rather than writing down all the methods. So in some ways, you know, get those methods down. If it's a non-calculator paper, you're bound to get fractions question, calculating fractions, adding, subtracting, timesing, dividing. Make sure you can do those. Show you've got an equivalent fraction so that you can actually gain marks from that. You know, show mixed numbers to top heavy. Again, it's a technique, so think about all those things that you know that you can then just use.
Cool. What's the best tips to remember the trigonometry values, i.e. cos 60 equals a half? I think that's just writing them down over and over and just trying to remember them. It's more like, that's more memory than like methods or anything.
I mean, I would have thought that your trig things are going to come up more, I would have thought, more likely to come up on your calculator paper.
I would say the same,
I would think. Because even if they give you easy values to work with, you've still got to times them or divide them and things like that, and the numbers are going to be a bit more tricky.
Awkward,
but I don't know what's coming up on your paper, so I can't say for certain.
Sarah says, can you explain frequency polygon drawing?
Right, you've got a frequency diagram. Basically, it's like a bar graph, and at the top, the centre of each block, you just join straight lines, so going from one block to another to another, so it's just the tops of each of the blocks.
It's the middles as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the middle of each block.
Right. What are the main important formulas to remember tomorrow for foundation? I don't know if you'll know.
I don't know. I think area and circumference of circle, those have been taken off the formula sheet, so I would make sure you know those two. But I'm not sure what else has come off. But definitely those two.
Okay, we've got one from Jade. Hello, Jade. She says, "Hiya, I've got one. This is A level actually. Have you got a top tip to remember when tackling a difficult integration question?"
Oh no. It's a while since I did A level. No, I mean, there's so many different ways of integrating that you just need to know those different methods and know them well. And it's
learning the methods.
It is. It's just practice. Seeing as many exam questions as possible will help.
What is the main thing you would say to focus on this year compared to last year for Foundation Paper 1?
I don't know what was on last year's paper, so I mean, the thing is that the examiners, when they write the exam papers, they use the majority of the syllabus.
Yeah.
So basically, they don't miss out lots of things from one year to another. They will try and put into a paper as much as possible.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't come up on this paper, you could almost write what the next paper will be.
Yeah, I feel
tomorrow's.
like with maths papers, they're not trying to trick you out. They're just trying to like test your knowledge. Slightly different. I feel like they're always just trying to see how much you know, how much you remember, and things like that. How many number of marks is usually a pass? That's from Emma.
It varies, different exams, different tiers.
Yeah.
So it all depends. You're better to have asked your teachers actually about that. It can vary from as low as sort of 30% sometimes, up to 80%. So it's very difficult to say. You really need to have asked your teachers that sort of mark.
Yeah.
But, if you write down something and you're using a technique, it's all marks. So just go in and get those marks. Don't sort of put nothing down. That's not going to help you at all. You never know, and in fact the examiners won't know what tier they're going to set until they've sort of done some marking, and then they set the boundaries from that.
That happens for a lot. They look at like how that your year has done, and then they kind of work out the grade boundaries. It's kind of difficult. Obviously you can make like an average, but you can't get exactly what it's going to be. What about circles for foundation and probably just higher as well? Well,
know how to work out the area, know how to do the circumference, basic ones like that, know the parts of the circle. Then moving on to circle properties, and that's obviously moving into your higher tier as well. The 4 basic ones are dead easy. I almost write them down alongside any circle questions. And then there's a couple of harder ones, the alternate segment theorem and things like that.
Yes, when you've got tangents and segments and all sorts.
But, if you can't learn all of them, just try the 4 simpler ones and look, that might help you. I mean, any geometry question, if you're stuck, then just really look at angles on straight lines, angles around a point, vertically opposite angles and things like that. They'll all help, and you can fill in those other angles, and it might just help you when you're trying to work out an angle.
Looking for the patterns that aren't always obvious as well. I know I think there was a bow tie one, was there, but you had 4 points of 4 points touching the circle, and then they were sometimes in different areas, but you just have to like look for the key aspects of each shape. I think
again, it's filling in as much information on that piece of paper as you can.
Now someone's asked if you could run over simultaneous equations. I think they just try and look through your notes a little bit. Oh my goodness, we've got so many. Do you think practicing mock papers are useful, or actual past papers that were actually sat?
I don't. Any past papers.
Yeah, literally anything you can get your hands on.
Even if you've got a textbook, go through some questions from there. It's any practice of any questions really. Make sure you've got the answer so you can check you've got the right answer, of course. Core bit maths is pretty good for if you're really stuck on simultaneous equations at this point in time. Go on to core bit maths, put it in your search engine, and they've got loads of little videos and of questions from there that's quite useful.
I found looking at little videos and stuff. I think there's Primrose Kitten, I think, was one that's been recommended to us a lot for all sorts of maths videos. I think she actually has a new video out today. It's quite a long one. I think it's all about how to help. So if you did want to check that out, then it might be worth watching as well. But
really, go and do some questions. That's what you need to do. It is practice that's going to help you.
How do you add mixed fractions?
Make sure the denominators are the same. So basically find equivalent fractions and then add them. Once you've got the denominators the same, just add the numerators.
Can you explain inverse proportion, please?
Not really. In a few seconds, it's really difficult. Start with your formula, and I certainly have y equals k over x is your inverse formula, and then you need to find k. But really, you are better to spend some quality time going through it, either in a textbook or online. Find something that's going to give you it, because it's a little bit, and practice it really.
Yeah. See, this won't be your only pure maths, I don't think, will it? Or do they only have one?
They usually have 2 papers.
Yeah, so if you've got a second one, then they tend to still be a wide range of stuff, but you can maybe look at what you didn't understand so much in this exam and maybe kind of use it for the next exam, possibly. Hello, Danielle. Just asked a good question. Yeah. Guess I just need to get practicing. I think you will, Jade. Yeah. Just keep practicing. What would you recommend revising for maths tonight, as I also have a geography exam tomorrow too?
I would, which subject are you most interested in? I think is a question that you need to ask yourself. If geography is your passion and you want to go on and do more with geography, then if you've done exam papers for maths, that should be sufficient. A lot of the students I used to teach, by the time we got around to doing the maths exam, because we've done so much practice, they didn't really need to revise at the last minute. And I think it can just make your head go all over the place. So sometimes it's better to be focusing on something else. Go and have a walk.
True. Kit Arnold asks, what are some... Oh, I've lost it. Oh no. Oh dear. Hang on. Okay. Sorry, I've lost it. Oh, where was it? Oh, here it is. Okay. What are some key subjects that are most likely to come up on the non-calculated paper? Oh, okay. Tomorrow. It's pretty broad, isn't it? I think what you're saying. Yeah. It's hard to kind of like pinpoint what's going to come up because it tends to be really general.
Yeah. I mean, fractions definitely will come up. That's a given. Ratio, anything where the numbers are fairly straightforward. So you could have a graph question, drawing a linear graph. So putting values in a table, a fairly straightforward expression. And then drawing your graph, make sure your line goes through all your points, and the same for a quadratic or any sort of graph. And if obviously it's a quadratic and it's not symmetrical, go and check your points. If it's a linear graph and it's not a straight line, then you've done something with the points, so go back and check. I mean, the beauty in maths is that you can actually check your answers.
You can see if it's wrong.
That's it. So it is a good idea to spend a few minutes checking your answer and checking your methods to see if you've done the right thing or not. Have a go at all the questions,
have a crack at them.
You've got nothing to lose. Nothing to lose.
Okay, we actually, Matthew has just asked, what would you do if you were stuck on a question but could do a little bit of maths on it? Also, what's the best way to de-stress? So just have a go at it, do all you can of it. Sometimes, as we were saying, the method marks that you can pick up are more than the answer, actually getting the answer. So just putting down what you know and what you think is right can actually get you more marks sometimes. But best way to de-stress.
Best way to de-stress. I'd go and have a swim.
True. Whatever you usually do to de-stress, if you're just do that. Watch TV, watch a little bit of TV, read a book, go for a swim, yoga, whatever works best for you, I think. Best tips for a foundation hard question.
I think foundation is hard. If you get a trick question, that can be quite tricky. Again, it's about breaking down those topics so that you can actually grab some marks from it. So you might not be able to get right to the end and be happy with your answer, but just again, it's starting off, think about what techniques you need to use. and trying to employ those techniques and do as much as you can on the question. So yeah, it is just have a go. Don't be afraid. Nobody's going to see that paper apart from an examiner.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter what you write down, but try to think of the skills that you've learnt in lessons, and put them down, really.
Catherine said, I don't really understand transformations of graphs. I don't know if there's any tips you could give her.
Cool. Transformations, tricky topic.
Yeah.
If you add something onto it, again, it's hard to explain. It can move it in two directions, obviously vertically. If you've got a value in front of the expression, it can stretch the graph.
Yeah.
It is really about almost sketching it. Start with y equals x, look at y equals x plus 2. How does that change the graph?
Yeah.
Look at y equals 2x, how does that change it? So really doing a few little graphs for yourself and looking at how it changes, and then you can employ that to more difficult expressions.
Charlotte said, I get really confused on algebra, even the very basics. Any last minute tips?
Algebra is just numbers, but it's with letters. So instead of seeing letters, put some numbers in it and see if you can get an answer from it.
Yeah.
So if you've got, I don't know, 2a plus 3 equals 10, put a value in for a and see if it works.
Yeah.
So trial and error. So it is about just seeing the number in, and you'll say, oh, that doesn't work, so I'll try something else. Do I need to try a bigger number or a smaller number?
Try to remember that it is a number. Like don't get panicked because it's a letter, because I know in like the more complicated maths that I do at A level, I panic when I see a letter, but then you just have to remember that it is actually a number at some point. Just don't stress yourself out too much just because it looks like something that can't be done, because it can be. Tomorrow says, can you do vectors, please? I don't know if you've got any tips on vectors.
Know your vector laws. Make sure you know about your scalar vectors. Know about how to add vectors. Think about them visually, and go for it. Some of those questions, they look really tricky, but they are very straightforward. So just try and have a go at them.
Do you think we should worry about grade boundaries?
No, because you can't do anything about it. You just need to do as many questions as you can and as well as you can. That's the main thing. Terminology hasn't come up, but there are a few words that I think might be useful for people. Integer, always one that confuses people. Just is a whole number, so don't get worried about that. Hence, that means if you've got an answer, they'll use and then we're going to use this again. So again, use that. Calculate. Congruent means exactly the same shape as it.
Right.
Estimate, think about using just one significant figure. And explain, you can do that mathematically. So explain something's the same as something else, then use the word congruent or use different words. Use maths terms and maths vocabulary, because that will really impress the examiner. So think about a couple of words tonight and use those, and I think you might use those. That will be useful.
We've actually got do you think it's best to drink a strawberry and banana oat smoothie before I go to bed tonight?
Oh,
I think it's probably...
Do they like it?
Oh, if you like it, go for it. But I think it's actually... It would probably be better to drink it in the morning, because bananas especially and oats are slow releases of energy, so it'd actually be really good for you in your exam. So I'd probably say, Raheem, drink it in the morning.
Have a drink of milk tonight. Make sure you sleep.
Right. Albert Square asks, will these be uploaded as videos afterwards? Yes, they will be. Explain y equals mx plus c.
Well, I told you about a linear graph. That's just a straight line graph. So y equals mx. M is your gradient, so the slope, in other words, and c is the intercept. That's just where it crosses on the y-axis.
Yeah. Do you think inverse functions will be on the non-calculator?
Possibly, because that's just an algebraic way of working.
Yeah, you don't really need a
it
calculator
could be,
for that. Have you got any tips for proving congruence/similarity?
If they give you a pair of scissors, you could perhaps cut out the shapes. No, don't do that. Go on. No, I don't really.
Maybe just a case of looking back over your notes. Maybe even asking your I'm sure your teachers will be around before your exam tomorrow. Maybe if you've got a last few minute questions, you could ask them. Maybe. Just
keep in mind, you don't need 100%. You know, even for your grade 9, you know, you don't need 100%. So if you can't do one thing or you're not sure about something, don't lose sleep about it. It's not going to matter. You know, you can get a 9. I remember somebody getting a grade A when A was the highest, and they got nearly every answer wrong on the paper. But because they put down good working out throughout their paper, they got the marks needed.
Yeah, because the actual answer is only like 1 mark. Yeah. So
that's a good thing about marks. Make sure that when you're going through your exam paper tomorrow, if you've got sort of 2 marks, there's 2 things. Keep in mind there's 2 things that they want from you. It might be an accuracy mark and a method mark. If it's 5 marks, they're looking for 5 things. So when you've done your working out, can you see 5 things that they could be marking?
Yeah, you can kind of judge how difficult a question is, like based on how many marks it is. So if it's only a 1 marker, then you know you don't need too much working. It's pretty straightforward. You just need to write your answer, really. That's what you get the mark for. When you prove perpendicular lines, is it the negative reciprocal? That's from Emma.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Do you think turning points will come up?
Yes, might be. You know, who knows? But yeah, calculus is a really straightforward topic for anybody doing the higher level tier. You know, differentiating and then finding turning points for maximum and minimum. It's a real good, easy concept and straightforward to earn many marks. So yeah, it's a good one to know. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you do algebraic fractions? Okay, well, we actually had someone ask oh no, I've lost it now. Oh no. Up here. Can you answer this question for me? 3y plus 10 equals 5y plus 3. So I don't know if you can just kind of explain the method behind getting them all to one side and making, you know, that sort of thing.
I'm just trying to work out the answer. 2y equals 7.
Sorry.
So y equals 3.5. Is that right, Kira?
8y equals... Oh no, I think
no, because they're taken
away. Oh yeah,
away.
2y, yeah.
Basically, take 3y off each side and then take 3 off each side. So you keep the equations balanced, basically.
Yeah.
And then you'll end up with 7 on the, I've got to remember my left hand side. Yeah. And 2y on the right.
Collect the like terms as well. So you've got your y's, collect them on one side, then you've got your non-y's, collect them on the other side, and then it kind of just all works itself out.
Algebraic fractions treat us like a normal fraction. You want a common denominator. So even though there's lots of x's and numbers and signs, forget those almost. Treat them as like 3/4. And how would you work out 3/4 plus 1/3? You would just find a common denominator of 12. So do the same thing with the 2 algebraic fractions.
Okay. What equations or values do we need to remember?
Equations you won't need to.
No. I think because, I mean, I know when we did Maths GCSE, we did so many past paper questions that probably most of them you know. If you don't, then, sorry. There's always equations that won't come up in the formula booklet that your teacher would have told you about. And so whether you've made a note of them, make a note of them, and then just try and remember those, I'd say. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, I don't think equations is the word.
Like formulae.
I think formulae they're looking for, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh no! Oh, it keeps skipping. How to work out values of sine, cos, and tan. Most of the time, just use your calculator.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, if it's non-calculator, you kind of just need to know them, don't you?
Remember your inverse function for finding the angle. And it's really substitution into that ratio. So, you know, the different lengths.
We've got some people who know each other in the comments. Zane and the review artist, crazy. Can you do trig without a calculator?
You can if you know all the ratios, and there are some fairly straightforward ones, but I think it's more likely to come up on a calculator paper. Yeah.
There's always simultaneous equations in higher, and they try to hide them. It's so irritating. I don't know if you maybe have any tips for picking out what the question's asking.
I'd underline, and I'd take a highlighter, and I'd use things like that to help me. And I always did when I did exams. So certainly highlighting, underlining, particularly things like units. Towards the end of a higher level paper, they do confuse units. They'll give you something in metres, and they want the answer in kilometres per hour. So just pay attention to those units, and time is a particularly one that really can confuse people. Something like 15 minutes is a quarter of an hour, so a quarter is 0.25. So remember, don't put down 0.15 as some people do. It is 0.25. Half an hour is 0.5 of an hour. And 20 minutes is 0.3 of an hour, or 0.3 recurring of an hour. So be careful of those little things, especially on speed, distance, time questions, because they do tend to put those sort of things in just to make
Test
you work
if you're
a
paying
little
attention.
bit. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. What do you recommend we revise strongly?
I wouldn't say don't revise anything
kind of everything,
now.
Really,
Practice exam questions, anything. Just sit down and do some questions. And it doesn't matter what it is. You'll find out if you know the subject or not. And if you don't, well, it's a little bit late now to be starting to worry about that. Just concentrate on what you can do. And just enjoy your exam tomorrow. You've got a lot of knowledge. Just use that knowledge, go in and feel confident, have a go at answering every question, and do as much as you can.
Okay. Could you please explain metric units, for example, centimetres to metres?
Basically, you've just got to learn those. So 100 centimetres in a metre, 1,000 metres in a kilometre. Those are the common ones.
Yeah.
And then you've got grams. 1,000 grams in a kilogram, and 1,000 millilitres in a litre. Those are the common ones that come up.
That's probably all you really need to know at GCSE.
Yeah.
It doesn't get too much more complicated than that. Danny asks, any tips for preparation for the first A-level exam in 2 weeks? So that's pure.
Again, it's just sitting down and going through exam papers.
All those past papers that our teacher's given us, Danny. We've just got to do them all.
It really is. You just do as much as you can, and if you get stuck, you've got to then go back and look up things. And it is just practice.
Yeah.
Just practice.
Practice makes perfect. Okay, Kate asks, can you explain bounds, how to know what decimal to go to?
Right, so if you've got something like 18, think about rounding. You go half. If it's to the whole number, you just do half and half. So 17.5 to 18.5. I know 18.5 would sort of round to 19, but in bounds, it's the halfway.
Yep.
So just think about that. So if you've got 300 and it's to the nearest 100, then that one, you're rounding your 100, you halve it, 50.
Yeah.
So it's 250 to 350. So it's just thinking about that halfway mark.
Okay, so coming up to the final couple of minutes, so I'm just gonna we'll answer a couple more questions. What about pressure and force and area? That always comes up. I've never been taught it.
Well, a lot of your formulas for volumes and area are in the front of your paper, so you don't need to remember sort of volumes of pyramids and things like that. Use those formulas to help you, and basically just be careful of the units, because it will always say something along the lines of a mark will be given for units.
Yeah.
So even if you end up, I haven't made a very good job of the question, but you've got it's a volume, so put down centimetres cubed, and you could even just get a mark for that. So even if you made a right mess of it.
Okay. Yeah, so still quite a lot of people still asking what sort of questions come up. We're not with maths, it's more general, so there's nothing like specific that we can kind of like pinpoint on, because they tend to test you on quite a broad range of everything that you've been taught. Right, okay, I think we'll do last question. I can't find one now. Okay, is there an easy way to remember simultaneous equations?
Not really.
No.
I think, again, look online for if you're really struggling at this point in time, and have a go at it, practice, a few questions. It is about sort of making the x's or the y's the same, so that you can then add
putting
them or
all on
take
the same
them
side
away.
again. Yeah, you've got an x plus y equals the number, and then that's kind of like, and then you got to remember if you're adding or taking them away. I always get a tiny little bit confused, so just look at it carefully. So if it's like, if you're adding it, then you have to take it away. You know, if they're both pluses, take them away. If it's a plus and a minus.
Well, the easy way is, if the first value you make the same, then you can just subtract them, because you're eliminating then the first value, whatever it is. So if you make that first value the same and then subtract, it'll always work. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you guys have found that useful.
Good luck.
Good luck. We'll be joined in about 10 minutes with my economics teacher, Mr Fotheringham. He's going to be talking about economics GCSE and business GCSE. So do come back and join us for that. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck.